So we have some World Series baseball tonight.
Yes, we do.
On Fox 2. And it is, if you've been under a rock, the Atlanta Braves and the Houston Astros. And I don't want to call this, because I love baseball, but when you talk about storylines, there clearly could be sexier matchups. I think just the Dodgers being in L.A., in Hollywood, the payroll, and locally we're thinking about Pujols and Max Scherzer. I mean, give a lot of credit to the Braves for beating that team. And then also the Houston Astros, a team where, to me, it's really hard to root for them, especially some of their guys that you know were a big part of the cheating scandal. It's the same guys. I mean, look, the same team that won the, especially position players. I mean, I know that George Springer's not there, but they're infield.
The pitching's different, but
pitching is different because you had, back in the day, you had Verlander, you had Cole, McCullers is out for this series, but the core four, they're calling it, not the Yankees core four, but their infield core four, if you're talking Gurriel, Altuve, Correa, Alex Bregman, I mean, three of those guys were really unlikable during this whole scandal. Now, for whatever reason, Gurriel, I feel like we don't talk about as much, but I mean, Bregman, Correa, Altuve, as he's rounding the bases and telling people not to rip his shirt off, I mean, they were the poster children for the scandal. So to me, it's really hard to root for the Astros, but they're not going anywhere. They're going to be really good. I mean, we'll see if they re-sign Correa. But at the end of the day, Dusty Baker, 72 years old, a lifer in this game, so much history. I know St. Louis folks maybe aren't rooting for him because over the years, the matchups with the Cubs and the Reds and all that. But, man, I feel like Dusty Baker's been in the game so long, he deserves a World Series title. So if the Astros win, I really can't be mad about it.
No, I want to see Dusty win. I get Cardinal fans, yeah, but you know what? For the most part, Dusty's a good dude. He really is a good dude. You read more and more stories about him since he took this job with Houston, and a couple facts, and something I learned this morning that I didn't know, maybe I had been told and I had forgotten. Part of the reason why Dusty Baker's in baseball is because of Hank Aaron, and the irony that his Astro team is taking on Hank Aaron's Braves team is just, you just go, whoa. And there's a great story in the New York Times by Tyler Kepner this morning, or within the last 2 days or so. And basically, Dusty Baker, when he was in his teens and getting ready to make a decision, Hank Aaron called his mom when he was out in the West Coast and said, hey, I'm out here in Atlanta, because he was drafted by Atlanta, because he had to decide he was going to play football. He was a multi-sport star. And Hank promised his mom, he could let him come out here, I will take care of him, and I will show him the ropes. And that's where everything started for Dusty Baker. He became super tight with Hank Aaron. And because of that, that whole thing started with Dusty. And he was taught, hey, these are the things you do, these are the things you don't do. And Dusty Baker's really, the more you read about him, you go, man, he's just a cool dude who just likes a lot of different things. He likes all kinds of different music. He's able to, 72 years old. He could communicate with today's players. He communicated with the players from 20 years ago. I mean, he's got a lot of pluses on his side, and it would be cool to see him win the series, because then it solidifies any argument that's left that he's not worthy of getting into the Hall. If he wins the series, he's in 100%. He probably already deserves to be in, but the fact that this would take care of that is kind of a cool thing.
You also wonder, I know they don't really do it this way, but we forget how really good of a player he was. So I know when we talk about Hall of Fame, we're thinking of him as a manager. But if you put together the fact that he was a player for 19 years, then a manager for how many after that? I mean, the last, 20 plus?
Yeah.
I mean, this man has 242 career home runs. And, his career OPS plus is 116. I mean, he finished 22nd in the MVP voting back in 72. He finished 4th in 1980, 7th in 1981. We're talking multiple-time All-Star, a Gold Glove in 1981, a couple Silver Sluggers. I mean, we're looking at years where he had 29 homers and 97 RBI and 20 1 homers and 99 RBIs. I mean, he was a really, really solid player as well.
He definitely was. He played on some really good Dodgers teams after the Braves. He played for Tony La Russa. Little irony there in his very last year. And Tony probably pushed him aside. And he didn't like that. But they have been he's just been a baseball lifer. And if there's ever a category that they could come up with for I don't even know what we want to call it, but, ambassador of the game, Dusty Baker's one of those guys. He deserves to be in.
And so as a manager, we're talking Giants, Cubs, Reds, Nationals, and now 2 years with the Astros. So 24 years of managing. And his win-loss is 1,987 wins. So you got to think, even if they win the World Series at the age of 72, if you're Dusty, do you want to come back and get 2,000 wins? He's 1,987 wins, 1,734 losses. So a 534 win percentage. Been to the playoffs a ton of times. A pennant, obviously, with the Giants, and now his second pennant with the Astros, and we'll see if he can finish the deal. My guy Mo Drummond always told me back in the day that Dusty's a fantastic dude. Whenever Dusty, and I don't know if he still does this, but when he'd come in town a lot, because he's a National League guy for all those years, he had the barber shop he'd go to in St. Louis, and it was one that either Mo went to or he was friends with, and he said, so Dusty'd be in there when he comes in for a series against the Cardinals, and he'd go to the barber shop, and everybody loved him. Awesome dude. He's just sitting there chopping it up, talking with everybody. And I know Dusty Baker, I'd have to research this more, but the knock on him is, he destroyed the arms of Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor, right? And if you start to look at when those guys got in the game, I mean, so Dusty's first year at the Cubs was 2003, which was the Bartman year. And Kerry Wood was with the Cubs several years before that. So I know he kind of has that where, he kills guys' arms.
Yeah.
The way also where, man, I mean, most of these pitchers are going to get injured if you're throwing 100-plus miles an hour. Look at Mark Pryor, for example. I remember when Mark Pryor came up, because I was living, when Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor were coming on the scene, I'm going to Bradley there, right in the middle of Illinois. Almost everybody, all my buddies, they're all Cubs fans. So we're watching the Cubs, and you'd look at Mark Pryor. He looked like a dude that could not be injured. They would even say that. I remember, wasn't there an article in Sports Illustrated, the perfect pitcher?
There is, and there was a segment that ESPN ran on SportsCenter, and they went through a bunch of different pitching coaches and all that. So he's got the perfect motion. He'll never get hurt. And it's like, boy, doesn't look like too many people know what they're talking about now.
Well, you saw him, his lower half. He had the largest calves I've ever seen in my life. And he did have really efficient mechanics. So it didn't look like a lot of effort. And he had tree trunks.
Yep.
So you watched him pitch, and you said, man, that dude's not going to get injured. Now, on the other hand, I think you could see it with Kerry Wood. That dude had
a little more violence.
And he had just the huge hammer curveball. Where go to Kerry Wood. So his 20 strikeout game, that was 98, correct? He was Rookie of the Year?
That sounds right, yeah.
So remember, he missed the next season with his injury. And I'm not trying to take Dusty Baker off the hook, because once Dusty Baker was then manager in 2003, maybe he used Pryor and Wood too much. I don't know. I haven't researched it enough. But Kerry Wood was a Cub 5 years prior. No pun intended. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I get
There's a lot of wear and tear prior to that, him showing up. But the thing, though, there is truth in Dusty using arms. I mean, in Cincinnati, he would go through bullpen arms through the first 3 months, and they'd be like, well, now we got to go find more arms. That's just the way Dusty managed the game. It was up to the front office to go get better arms.
Okay, so you'll probably remember this story. Do you remember a few years back when Adam Wainwright got injured? It may have been, I got to do the math here. Okay, it was the 2011 injury, because Dusty was manager of the Reds at the time. And so remember, Adam Wainwright misses the whole year. Do you remember the story that in the clubhouse, supposedly Johnny Gomes was saying Wainwright's out, and almost celebrating that? Do you remember this story? It's 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think I remember something about it. But yeah, it was Gomes who was. That's right. Yeah, okay.
It became a story, and then a reporter reported that. Somebody got mad at the reporter. I can't exactly remember if Gomes said, "Oh, it was taken out of context," or "I wasn't celebrating." Right. Blah blah blah. But I do remember that Dusty said something, and he wasn't disparaging in any way Adam Wainwright, but he said something along the lines of, oh, who are they going to blame that on? And that was him knowing that for the last, 18 years, every pitching injury for one of his pitchers was blamed on him.
Yes. There's a lot of truth in that. And he does use arms. But that he's still, as you said, he's what? How many away from 2,000?
He's only 13 wins away.
13 wins away. I mean, that still, you mount up that many wins, you're really good. You have to stick around long enough to get that opportunity. He's just he's been a good manager. He's never been able to get over the top. Maybe this is the year for him. I mean, that's the bottom line. And like I said, I'm pulling for him. I've read a lot more about him in the last year. There was just something on social media last night. It was something that he had done, I don't know, I'm not going to say within the last week, but within the last couple of years. And he was talking about kids, and he just flat out said, you know what, all this talk of what to do with your 13-year-old and that, let your kids play. They want to play different sports, let them go play. He's just looking at me and go, you know what, he's right. He's a cool dude. He's not worried about it. Anybody's feelings, he's going to tell you what he thinks.
So you got game 1 tonight on Fox 2. It's Charlie Morton for Atlanta versus Framber Valdez for Houston. I don't know who I think is going to win this series. I would have to pick Houston, but man, the Braves to me feel like the Giants a little bit, where all season long we're saying, okay, the Giants they're not gonna sustain this. And even though the Braves were not as good as the Giants in the regular season, when we got to the postseason, you looked at that Brewers-Braves series and you said, like, wasn't that the most uninteresting on paper of the series?
It was the series you looked at and you go, well, no, neither one of those teams are going to win, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
You know? So, yeah, they were the one team in the National League I didn't think had a chance. I would even have given the Cardinals more hope, even in that one-game playoff, knowing, hey, they won 17 games in a row. You could say they're the hottest team in the game right now. And you go, yeah, the Braves. Nah, Braves are doing everything right. Freddie Freeman might be the star. We'll see. I mean, anybody could be the star, but Freddie Freeman, it could be Rosario continuing to do what he's come out of nowhere. I mean, he's blown away the numbers that David Freese had put up until this point. And you know how good Freese was in 2011. That just kind of puts some things in perspective there for you.
And that's where we've seen this. It's part of the beauty of the playoffs. When I saw a tweet the other day, and it was the best postseason performances in, let's say, their first 10 games or so in their first playoffs. And it was guys like Randy Rosarena and Daniel Murphy and Eddie Rosario. And you mentioned Freddie Freeman, who we know. Freddie Freeman is an absolute stud. And you go through the guys who are really performing, so it doesn't surprise you when you see guys like Freddie Freeman and Rafael Devers, who's not in the postseason anymore. But look at some of these guys who are carrying the freight. I mean, Eddie Rosario for the Braves, who has been a really good player for a long time for the Twins, but he didn't have a good year this year at all.
Right.
So he was an afterthought. This dude in the playoffs in 10 games, 474 average, 524 on base, 789 slug. He's got over 1,300 OPS, 3 homers, and 11 RBIs. A guy like that who, if you'd have went into the series and said, okay, we can't let Freddie Freeman beat us. Even Jock Peterson's been hot. We can't let him beat us. Did anybody mention Eddie Rosario, who freaking carried the Braves against the Dodgers?
No, because you go, he can't beat us like he beat everybody else, can he? But yet if he continues and he starts tonight, you're going to go, hey, guys, don't pitch to him anymore. Walk him. Don't let him beat you. It's part of the fun of the playoffs, though, because you never know. We might have a completely new star show up in this series that we haven't seen yet thus far.
And that's where, when you look at the Astros lineup, I know, look, they don't have Cole, obviously, and Verlander anymore, and McCullers being out is really going to hurt them. They're going to have to piece together their pitching. There's going to be a lot of bullpen-type games. There's going to be quick hooks. We know that. But, man, when you look at that lineup, I mean, Kyle Tucker, 4 homers and 15 RBI in the postseason. Yordan Alvarez is an absolute monster. That man's OPS is over 1,300. I haven't even brought up the Gurriels, the Altuves, the Correas of the world. I mean, when you're pitching to the Astros, that's got to be one of the deepest 1 through 6, 1 through 7s in recent years. When you have folks like Kyle Tucker and Yuli Gurriel batting 5th, 6th, 7th, that is a really difficult lineup to face.
It is that, and then you throw in the fact if you're the opposing manager and you're trying to navigate through it, with your pitching staff, the way pitching staffs are used now in the playoffs, you piece together an inning here with a different guy each inning. It's left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. You can't play against that, especially now with the rules. It's a 3-batter minimum. I mean, there's just so much there that if you're the opposing manager, like Snitker is, you're going, I am really up against it with that group. And they all can rake. Alvarez is just unbelievable. Since his knees have been healed, he came into the league with bad knees, and he was playing through that because he didn't want to get kept down in the minors. He played through bad knees just to get an opportunity, and then last year they go, you need to go get these fixed. Now his base is good, and he is just crushing baseballs. He's an amazing hitter to watch.
Text line 855-282-8255. Jobu's Rum saying, don't forget, Splashback, he invented the high five. I did see a story about that.
He and Glenn Burke?
Dusty Baker potentially inventing the high five. And Vic on the east side says, dang it, Jim, why did you have to say all of that about Mr. Baker? As a lifelong Braves fan, now I have to turn off my loyalty, LOL. Well, at least in that case, it's a win-win for you. If you're a Braves fan, but Dusty also, if he gets his ring, you can't be too disappointed. Splashback saying one more time, you couldn't tell with Mark Pryor on being injured, but you knew Kerry would.